Hello, guys and gals, and this is part 3 of our reading of The Last Unicorn by Peter Beagle. And we are going to move this now. We were on this page right here. If I remember right, we were on page 27. And no, I didn't get this book from the Hope Chest. I did get something from the Hope Chest recently. For $1.19. Okay. We're going to start down here because the paragraph actually starts down here, and we actually ended right here, but we're going to, just for context, we're going to read the previous paragraph. Spindrick's face had gone the color of oatmeal. The old woman caught her by chance, he whispered, asleep as she took you. But it was an ill fortune, and they both know it. Mommy Fortuna's craft is just sure enough to hold the monster, but its mere presence is wearing all her spells so thin that in a little time she won't have power enough left to fry an egg. She should never have done it, never meddled with a real harpy, a real unicorn. The truth melts her magic away, but she cannot keep from trying to make it serve her. But this time, Sister of the Rainbow, believe it or not, they heard Ruck braying to the odd onlookers. Her name means the Dark One, the one whose wings blacken the sky before a storm. She and her two sweet sisters have nearly starved the king Phineas to death by snatching and befouling his food before he could eat it. But the sons of the North Wind made them quit that, didn't they, my beauty? The harpy made no sound, and Ruck grinned like a cage himself. Can cages actually grin? Yeah, I guess they can. Okay. She put up a fiercer fight than all the others put together, he went on. It was like trying to bind all hell with her hair, but Mommy Fortuna's powers are great enough even for that. Creatures of night brought to light. Polly won a cracker. Few in the crowd laughed. The harpy's talons tightened on her perch until the wood cried out. You'll need to be free. You'll need to be free when she frees herself, the magician said. She mustn't catch you caged. I dare not touch the iron, the unicorn replied. My horn could open the lock, but I cannot reach it. I cannot get out. She was trembling with horror of the harpy, but her voice was quite calm. Spindrick the magician drew himself up several inches taller than the unicorn would have thought possible. Fear nothing, he began grandly. For all my air of mystery, I have a feeling heart. But he was interrupted by the approach of Ruck and his followers. Oh. Grown quieter, and the grubby gang who had giggled at the manicore, the magician fled, calling back softly, Don't be afraid, Spindrick is with you. Do nothing till you hear from me. His voice drifted to the unicorn, so faint and lonely that she was not sure whether she actually heard it or only felt it brush against her. In the growing dark, the crowd stood in front of her cage, peering at her with strange shyness. Ruck said, The unicorn, and stepped aside. She heard hearts bounce, tears brewing, and breath going backwards, but nobody said a word. By the sorrow and loss and the sweetness of their faces, she knew that they recognized her, and she accepted their hunger as her homage. She thought of the hunter's great-grandmother, the hunter's great-grandmother, and wondered what it must be like to grow old and to cry. Most shows, said Rook after a time, would end here. For what could they possibly present after a genuine unicorn? But Mommy Fortuna's Midnight Carnival holds one more mystery yet. A demon who's destructive more than the dragon, and more monstrous than the manicore, more hideous than the harpy, and certainly more universal than the unicorn. He waved his hand towards the last wagon, and the black hangings began to wriggle open. though there was no one pulling them. "Behold her!" Rook cried. "Behold the last, the very end. Behold Eli? No, Ellie. Ellie, that's it." Inside the cage, it was darker than the evening, and cold stirred behind the bars like a living thing. Something moved in the cold, and the unicorn saw Ellie, an old, bony, ragged woman who crouched in the cage, rocking and warming herself before a fire that was not there. She looked so frail that the weight of the darkness should have crushed her, and so helpless and alone that the watchers should have rushed forward in pity to free her. Instead, they began to back silently away, for all the world, as though Ellie was stalking them. But she was not even looking at them. She sat in the dark and creaked a song to herself in a voice that sounded like a saw going through a tree, and like a tree getting ready to fall. "What is plucked will grow again. What is slain lives on. What is stolen will remain. What is gone is gone." "She doesn't look like much, does she?" Rook said. "But no hero can stand before her. No god can wrestle her down. No magic can keep her out or in, for she's no prisoner of ours. Even while we exhibit her here, she is walking among you, touching and taking, for Ellie is old age." That's right. I remember this legend. The cold of the cage reached out to the unicorn, and whenever it touched her, she grew lame and feeble. She felt herself withering, loosening, felt her beauty leaving her with her breath. Ugliness swung from her mane, dragging down her head. Stripped her tail, gaunt, her body ate up her coat and ravaged her mind with remembrances of what she had once been. Somewhere nearby, the harpy made a low, eager sound, but the unicorn would gladly have huddled in the shadow of her bronze wings to hide from this last demon. Ellie's song sawed away at her heart. What is sea-born dies on land. Soft is trod upon. What is given burns the hand. What is gone is gone. The show was over. The crowd was stealing away. No one alone, but in couples and fews and severals, strangers holding strangers' hands, looking back often to see if Ellie was following. Rook called plaintively, "Won't the gentleman wait to hear the story about the satyr?" And sent a sour yowl of laughter, chasing their slow flight. Creatures of the night brought to light. They struggled through the stiffening air, past the unicorn's cage, and on away, with Rook's laughter yapping them home, and Ellie still singing. "This is illusion," the unicorn told herself. "This is illusion," and somehow raised a head heavy with death to stare deep into the dark of the last cage, and to see, not old age, but Mommy Fortuna herself, stretched and snickering and chambering to the ground with her old eerie ease. And the unicorn knew then that she had not become mortal and ugly at all, but she did not feel beautiful again. Perhaps that was illusion too, she thought wearily. "I enjoyed that," Mommy Fortuna said to Rook. "I always do. I guess I'm just stage-struck at heart." You better check on that darn harpy," Rook said. "I could feel her working loose this time. It was like I was a rope holding her, and she was untying me," he shuddered, and lowered his voice. "Get rid of her," he said hoarsely, "before she scatters us across the sky like bloody clouds. She thinks about it all the time. I can feel her thinking about it." "Fool, be still." The witch's own voice was fierce with fear. "I can turn her into wind if she escapes, or into snow, or into 7 notes of music, but I choose to keep her. No other witch in the world holds a harpy captive, and none ever will. I would keep her if I could do it only by feeding her a piece of your liver every day." That's rude. "Oh, that's nice," Rook said. He sidled away from her. What if she only wanted your liver?" he demanded. "What would you do then?" Well, that is a good question. I would probably come back with that too. 30, okay. Almost chapter 3. "Feed her yours anyway," Mama Fortuna said. "She wouldn't know the difference. Harpies aren't bright." Alone in the moonlight, the old woman glided from cage to cage, rattling locks and prodding her enchantments, as a housewife squeezes melons in the market. When she came to the harpy's cage, the monster made a sound as shrill as a spear, and spread the horrid glory of its wings. For a moment, it seemed to the unicorn that the bars of the cage began to wriggle and run like rain. But Mommy Fortuna crackled her twiggy fingers, and the bars were iron again, and the harpy sank down in its perch waiting. "Not yet," the witch said. "Not yet." They stared at each other with the same eyes. Mommy Fortuna said, "You're mine. If you kill me, you're mine." The harpy did not move, but a cloud put out the moon. "Not yet," Mama Fortuna said, and she turned towards the unicorn's cage. "Well," she said in her sweet, smoky voice, "I had you frightened for a little while, didn't I?" She laughed with a sound like snakes hurrying through mud, and strolled closer. Please hold just a second. I was pondering what that would sound like. Snakes running through mud, slithering through mud. Wait, what was the... hurrying through mud. Whatever your friend the magician may say," she went on, "I must have some small art after all. To trick a unicorn into believing herself old and foul, that takes a certain skill, I'd say. And is it a twopenny spell that holds the Dark One prisoner?" No other till I..." The unicorn replied, "Do not boast, old woman. Your death sits in that cage and hears you." "Yes," Mommy Fortuna said calmly, "but at least I know where it is." "You were out on the road hunting for your own death," she laughed again, "and I know where that one is, too, but I spared you the finding of it, and you should be grateful for that." Forgetting where she was, the unicorn pressed forward against the bars. They hurt her, but she did not draw back. "The Red Bull," she said. "Where can I find the Red Bull?" Mama Fortuna stepped very close to the cage. "The Red Bull of King Haggard," she muttered. "So you know of the bull." She showed two of her teeth. "Well, he'll not have you," she said. "You belong to me." The unicorn shook her head. "You know better," she answered gently. "Free the harpy while there is time, and set me free as well. Keep your poor shadows, if you will, but let us go." The witch's stagnant eyes blazed up so savagely bright that a ragged company of luna moths off to a night revel fluttered straight into them and sizzled into snowy ashes. Luna moth, that's the big green ones. I think they're protected here. "I'd quit show business first," she snarled, trudging through eternity, hauling my homemade horrors. "Do you think that was my dream when I was young and evil? Do you think I chose this meager magic sprung of stupidity because I never knew the true witchery? I play tricks with dogs and monkeys because I cannot touch the grass, but I know the difference. And now you ask me to give up the sight of you, the presence of your power? I told Rook I'd feed his liver to the harpy if I had to, and so I would. And to keep you, I'd take your friend Schmidrick, and She raised herself to gibberish at last to silence. "Speaking of livers," the unicorn said, "real magic can never be made by offering up someone else's liver. You must tear out your own and not expect to get it back. The true witches know that." A few grains of sand rustled down Mommy Fortuna's cheek as she stared at the unicorn. All witches weep like that. She turned and walked swiftly towards the wagon, but suddenly she turned again and grinned her rubbly grin. But I tricked you twice anyway, she said. Did you really think that those Googlers knew you for yourself without any help from me? No, I had to give you an aspect that they could understand, and a horn they could see. These days it takes a cheap carnival witch to make folks recognize a real unicorn. You'd do much better to stay with me and be false, for in this whole world only the Red Bull will know you when he sees you. She disappeared into her wagon, and the harpy let the moon come out again. Schmendrick came back a little before dawn, slipping between the cages as silently as water. Only the harpy made a sound when he went by. I couldn't get away any sooner, he told the unicorn. She set Rook to watching me, and he hardly ever sleeps. But I ask him a riddle, and it always takes him all night to solve riddles. Next time, I'll tell him a joke and keep him busy for a week. That's a good one. The unicorn was gray and still. There is magic on me, she said. Why did you not tell me? I thought you knew, the magician answered gently. After all, didn't you wonder how it could be that they recognized you? Then he smiled, which made him look a little older. No, of course not. You never would wonder about that. There had never been a spell on me before, the unicorn said. She shivered long and deep. There has never been a world in which I was not known. I know exactly how you feel, Schmendrick said eagerly. The unicorn looked at him out of dark, endless eyes, and he smiled nervously and looked at his hands. It is a rare man who is taken for what he truly is, he said. There is much misjudgment in this world. Now, I knew you for a unicorn when I first saw you, and I know that I am your friend. Yet you take me for a clown, or a clod, or a betrayer, and so must I be if you see me so. The magic on you is only magic, and will vanish as soon as you are free. But the enchantment of error that you put on me, I must wear forever in your eyes. We are not always what we seem, and hardly ever what we dream. Still, I have read or heard it sung that unicorns, when time was young, could tell the difference twixt the two, the false shining and the true, the lips laugh and the heart's me. His quiet voice lifted as the sky grew lighter, and for a moment the unicorn did not hear the bars whining or the soft ringing of the harpy's wings. I think you are my friend, she said. Will you help me? If not, you, no one, the magician answered. You are my last chance. One by one, the sad beasts of the midnight carnival came whimpering, sneezing, and shuddering awake. One had been dreaming of rocks and bugs and tender leaves, another of bounding through high, hot grass, a third of mud and blood, and one had dreamed of a hand scratching the lonely place behind its ears. Only the harpy had not slept, and now she sat staring into the sun without blinking. Schmendrick said, If she frees herself first, we are lost. They heard Rook's voice nearby. That voice always sounded nearby, calling, Schmendrick, hey Schmendrick, I got it. It's a coffee pot, right? The magician began to move slowly away. Tonight, he murmured to the unicorn, trust me, till dawn. And it was gone with the flap and a scrabble. With the flap and scrabble. Seemed as before to leave part of himself behind. Rook loped by the cage a moment later, all deadly economy. Hidden in her black wagon, Mommy Fortuna grumbled Ellie's song to herself. Here is there, and high is low. All may be undone. What is true, no two men know. What is gone is gone. Soon a new catch of spectators began to come sauntering up to see the show. Rook called them in, crying, "Creatures of the night," like an iron parrot, and Schmendrick stood on a box and did tricks. The unicorn watched him with great interest and a growing uncertainty, not for his heart, but for his craft. He made an entire sow out of a sow's ear, turned a sermon into a stone. That is the word sermon, isn't it? Turned a sermon into a stone, a glass of water into a handful of water, a 5 of spades into a 12 of spades, and a rabbit into a goldfish that drowned. Each time conjured up confusion. He glanced quickly at the unicorn with eyes that said, "Oh, but you know what I really did." Once he changed a dead rose into a seed. The unicorn liked that one, though it did turn out to be a radish seed. So, wait. The 12 of spades would actually be the king of spades, wouldn't it? I don't know. Anyways, maybe it's meant to be trickery. The show began again once more. Rook led the crowd from one of Mommy Fortuna's poor fables to another. The dragon blazed, Cerberus howled for hell to come and help him, and the satyr tempted women until they wept. They squinted and pointed at the Manicore's yellow tusks and swollen sting, grew still at the thought of the Midgard serpent, and wondered at Arachne's new web, which was like a fisherman's net, with the dripping moon in it. Each of them took it for a real web, but only the spider believed that it held the real moon. This time Rook did not tell the story of King Phineas and the Argonauts. Indeed, he hurried his sightseers past the harpy's cage as quickly as he possibly could, grabbing only her name and the meaning of it. The harpy smiled. Nobody saw her smile except the unicorn, and she wished that she had the chance. Nobody saw her smile except the unicorn, and she wished that she had chanced to be looking somewhere else at the time. When they stood in front of her cage, gazing silently in at her, the unicorn thought bitterly, "Their eyes are so sad. How much sadder would they be, I wonder, if the spell that disguises me dissolved, and there was nothing left staring at a common white mare." The witch was right. The witch is right. No one would know me. But then a soft voice, rather like the voice of Schmendrick the magician, said inside her, "But their eyes are so sad." Wait a minute. Like the eye was. Okay. And when Rook shrieked, "Behold the very end," and the black hanging slithered back to reveal Ellie, mumbling in the cold and her darkness, the unicorn felt the same helpless fear of growing old that set the crowd to flight, even though she knew that it was only Mama Fortuna in the cage. She thought, "The witch knows more than she knows she knows." Night came quickly, perhaps because the harpy hurried it on. The sun sank into dirty clouds like a stone into the sea, and with about as much chance of rising again as there was no moon or any stars, Mommy Fortuna made her gliding rounds of the cages. The harpy did not move when she drew near, and that made the old woman stand and stare at her for a long while. "Not yet," she muttered at last, "not yet." But her voice was weary and doubtful. She peered briefly at the unicorn, her eyes a stir of yellow in the greasy gloom. "Well, one day more," she said in a cackling sigh, and turned away again. There was no sound in the carnival after she was gone. All the beasts were asleep, save the spider, who wove, and the harpy, who waited. Yet the night creaked tighter and tighter until the unicorn expected it to split wide open, ripping a seam down the sky to reveal more bars. She thought, where's the magician? At last he came hurrying through the silence, spinning and dancing like a cat in the cold, stumbling over shadows When he reached the unicorn's cage, he made a joyful bow to her and said proudly, "Schmendrick is with you." In the cage nearest to her, the unicorn heard the edges the edges shivering of bronze. "I think we have very little time," she said. "Can you truly set me free?" The tall man smiled, and even his pale, solemn fingers grew merry. I told you that the witch had made 3 great mistakes. Your capture was the last, and the taking of the harpy the second, because you are both real, and Mommy Fortuna can no more make you hers than she can make the winter a day longer. But to take me for a mountebank like herself, that was her first and fatal folly. For I too am real. I am Schmendrick the magician, the last of the red-hot swamis, and I am older than I look. Where is the other?" the unicorn asked. Schmendrick was pushing back his sleeves. "Don't worry about Rook. I ask him another riddle, one that has no answer. He may never move again." He spoke 3 angled words and snapped his fingers. The cage disappeared. The unicorn found herself standing in a grove of trees, orange and lemon, pear and pomegranate, almond and acacia, with soft spring earth under her feet and the sky growing over her. Her heart turned light as smoke, and she gathered up her strength of her body for a great bound into the sweet night. But she let the leap drift out of her, untaken, for she knew, although she could not see them, that the bars were still there. She was too old not to know. "I'm sorry," Schmendrick said, somewhere in the dark. "I would have liked it to be that spell that freed you." Now he sang something cold and low, and the strange trees blew away like dandelion down. "Then this is a surer spell," he said. "The bars are now as brittle as old cheese, which I crumble and scatter so." Then he gasped and snatched his hand away. Each long finger was dripping blood. "I must have gotten the accent wrong," he said hoarsely. He hid his hands in his cloak and tried to make his voice light. "It comes and goes." A scratching of flinty phases this time, and Schmendrick's bloody hands flickered across the sky. Something gray and grinning, something like a bear, but bigger than a bear. Something that chuckled muddily came limping from somewhere, eager to crack the cage like a nut and pick out bits of the unicorn's flesh with its claws. Schmendrick ordered it back into the night, but it wouldn't go. The unicorn backed into a corner and lowered her head, but the harpy stirred softly in her cage, ringing, and the gray shape turned what must have been its head and saw her. It made a foggy, globbering sound of terror and was gone. The magician cursed and shivered. He said, "I called him up one other time long ago. I couldn't handle him then either. Now we owe our lives to the harpy, and she may yet come to call for them before the sun rises." He stood silently, twisting his wounded fingers, waiting for the unicorn to speak. "I'll try once more," he said finally. "Shall I try once more?" The unicorn thought that she could still see the night boiling where the gray thing had been. "Yes," she said. And we're going to see if this works in the next episode. Sorry to leave it on such a cliffhanger, but we are at 30 minutes. And, well, actually we're at 29, but I still have the outro to do. We're going to pick this up on page 36 right here. I think this is where something really interesting happens, because I remember this movie really well, and I'm not sure exactly how well it follows the book. Anyway, this was part 3 of our reading of The Last Unicorn by Peter Beagle. If you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. And if you want to support me in any way at all that information will be in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great and wonderful day.